For this video, I want to talk about Greatjon Umber. For a lot of us, Greatjon is a favorite. He's loud, fierce, loyal, and a whole lot of fun, and his epicness was not adequately represented in the show. So this video, let's talk about the Greatjon. Jon Umber, nicknamed Greatjon or the Greatjon, is the head of House Umber and the Lord of the Last Hearth. His eldest son was named after him, but is referred to as Small Jon, even when the boy began to take his father in size. Besides Jon, he had an unknown number of sons and at least 2 daughters. He also has 2 uncles, Mors Umber and Hother Umber. A huge man, Greatjon stands as tall as Hodor, around 7 feet, and is twice as wide as him. Jaime Lannister considers him one of the strongest men in the 7 Kingdoms. And rightly so. He is a fierce, loud man that wields a huge, ugly greatsword, bigger than the sword Ice. He also has little respect for accepted standards of behavior in society. He will pick up a king's mother off her feet in a comforting embrace and just not care how it's viewed by others. As little is known about him before the books, I want to spend this video talking about him and his actions throughout the books. So this is a book's recap for Greatjon while exploring his personality. Starting with the first book, A Game of Thrones. When Robb calls his house his bannermen, the Umbers led by Greatjon are one of the houses to arrive at Winterfell. At Winterfell, Greatjon is an intimidating man that threatens to take his forces home if he is placed behind the Hornwoods or the Cerwyns in the order of march. To which Robb replied he was welcome to do so. And then when they were done with the Lannisters, he promised to march back north, root him out of his keep, and hang him for an oathbreaker. This did not sit well with Greatjon, who threw his ale to the floor and yelled that Robb was so green he must piss grass. When men tried to restrain him, Greatjon knocked a man to the floor, kicked over a table, and unsheathed his huge, ugly greatsword. This prompted his sons, brothers, and sworn swords to all leap to their feet and pull out their steel as well. Robb, despite being terrified of Greatjon, gave a quiet command, causing Greywind to leap on Greatjon, sending him on his back, and his sword spinning out of reach as the direwolf bit off 2 of his fingers. After watching this, Robb replied, "My lord father taught me that it was death to bear steel against your liege lord, but doubtless you only meant to cut my meat." Greatjon then stood up, sucking at the red stumps of his fingers, and began to laugh. "Your meat," he roared, "is bloody tough." And from that moment, Greatjon became Robb's right-hand man, his most loyal champion, declaring to all that Robb was a Stark after all, and they damn well better bend their knees if they didn't fancy having them chewed off. Greatjon would continue to prove his loyalty to the Starks throughout the books. After the incident in the hall, Robb tells Bran that he thought Greatjon was going to kill him, and he was frightened by how Lord Umber threw down a man like he was a mere child. He admits that Lord Umber is the loudest of his men, but not the worst of them. After that confrontation with Greatjon, Lord Umber would remain close to Robb, while at Winterfell, when Robb would eat in a solar instead of the Great Hall, he would be accompanied by his Lord Bannermen, including Greatjon, to discuss the long march to come. Greatjon would also protect Robb from any unwanted individuals such as Osha, who when she sees Robb in Winterfell's yard, tries to approach him to tell him he should be leading his men north, not south, to fight. However, before she can get to Robb, Greatjon shoves her out of his path. Finally, Robb and his house's bannermen leave Winterfell, with Lord Umber among them. When Bran prays to the old gods to keep Robb safe in his campaign, he even asks the old gods to watch over Lord Umber. So, despite being a scary man, even Bran has some affection for him. Robb's march leads him south to Moat Cailin. When they arrive at Moat Cailin, Greatjon is on one side of Robb as they go through the gate, and then he makes his home in the Children's Tower. When Catelyn Stark arrives at Moat Cailin, she finds her son surrounded by his bannermen, in conversation with Roose Bolton and Greatjon. Upon seeing Catelyn, the lords go to Lady Stark to pay their respects, including Greatjon. During this greeting, Catelyn reveals she sent Rodrik Cassel to Winterfell under the command to hold the castle. Hearing this, and seeing how uneasy she is, Greatjon tells her in a low rumble, "Have no fear on that count, Lady Stark. Winterfell is safe. We'll shove our swords up Tywin Lannister's bunghole soon enough, begging your pardon, and then it's on to the Red Keep to free Ned." A little later, alone with his mother, Robb talks about leading his army himself. This greatly upsets Catelyn, who begs him to give the command to someone else, one of her choices being Greatjon. However, Robb refuses and decides to lead the army himself. But despite losing that argument, Catelyn does win one argument with Robb here. Under Catelyn's insistence, Robb gets a personal guard, something the Lord's bannermen also agree to. Lord Umber's son, Small John Umber, is among the 30 men chosen as part of the guard, and this is seen as a great honor. Robb and his Lord's bannermen would spend time trying to decide how they should move on from Moat Cailin. While deciding their next move, Lord Umber tells Robb he should take the battle to Lord Tywin and surprise him, stating even though he has more men and armored horses, that if they catch him with his britches down, it won't matter. Despite Greatjon's insistence on his plan, Robb feels a man who has fought as many battles as Tywin Lannister won't be easily surprised. So instead, Robb decides to leave a small force at Moat Cailin and then once below the neck, split his forces in two, the foot down the King's Road and the horsemen to cross the Green Fork at the Twins. Robb considers giving Greatjon the honor of leading the foot, telling Catelyn that Lord Umber is always saying they should smash Lord Tywin. However, Catelyn talks her son out of it, telling him, "Your father once told me that the Greatjon was as fearless as any man he had ever known. Your father is not fearless. He is brave, but that is very different. You want a cold cunning, I should think, not courage." With her words, Robb doesn't give Lord Umber the command of the foot, but instead gives it to Roose Bolton. So with Robb's new plan, Lord Umber and his forces go with Robb to the Twins. When they arrive at the Twins, they see that the battlements are armed with spears, swords, scorpions, and numerous archers, with the drawbridge up and the gates closed and barred. At this sight, Greatjon cursed and began to swear. When Catelyn offers to go in and talk to Lord Frey herself, Greatjon responds, brows furrowed, "You, my lady?" Despite his respect for women, Jon has a very strong belief women shouldn't be involved in battles, war, or anything like this, as they just aren't made for it. Lord Umber would be very vocal many times throughout Robb's campaign how women have no place on the battlefield. Regardless, Catelyn goes in to talk to Walder, and at the Twins, Robb forges an alliance with House Frey that allows him to move on to Riverrun to stop the Lannister siege. While close to Riverrun, Robb lays a trap for Jaime Lannister's forces, and the Battle of the Whispering Wood occurs. At the beginning of the Battle of the Whispering Wood, Greatjon blew his war horn in answer to Meg Mormont's war horn to signal Jaime's riders had entered the trap. Lord Karstark's war horn answered shortly after that. Of course, Lord Umber also fought in this battle, leading his riders from beneath the trees in a long line to attack. After the successful battle, Greatjon and Theon lead a mob of men up a slope after Robb, dragging the caught and defeated Sir Jaime Lannister between them. When all is settled, Greatjon agrees with Robb that Jaime should have a strong guard around him, as Lord Karstark will want his head on a pike for killing both his sons in battle. With the victory at the Whispering Wood, Robb moves on to liberate Riverrun from the Lannister siege during the Battle of the Camps. During this battle, Greatjon sets fire to the siege towers the Crown's forces were building. After the successful battle, Lord Umber followed in a second boat behind Robb's with Brynden Tully and Lord Karstark to Riverrun. When they learn of Ned Stark's death, Greatjon tells Robb that the red line of the comet in the sky is the old gods having unfurled a red flag of vengeance for Ned. Of course, Greatjon also believes the old gods have been looking out for the Starks in other ways, such as telling others that the old gods of the north sent the direwolves to the Stark children on purpose, further demonstrating his complete faith and loyalty to House Stark. While at Riverrun, Lord Umber prayed in the God's Wood with Robb and some of his other Lord's bannermen. Afterwards, he attended a war council in Riverrun's Great Hall, sitting at Robb's left hand. The council went late into the night, with the lords all taking turns arguing about what they should do next. Greatjon yells Craven when a Frey suggests that they wait and allow Renly and Joffrey to fight it out, and then bow or oppose the victor. Later in this council, Robb declares his sword is the only piece he has for the Lannisters, and Greatjon bellowed in approval, something Catelyn is not happy with, telling Robb to make peace, to which Lord Umber responds, "You are a woman, my lady. Women do not understand these things." Finally, amongst the arguing, Greatjon leaps to his feet and shouts, voice booming off the rafters, "My lords, here is what I say to these two kings." He spat on the ground and continued, "Renly Baratheon is nothing to me, nor Stannis neither. Why should they rule over me and mine from some flowery seat in Highgarden or Dorne? What do they know of the Wall, or the Wolf's Wood, or the barrows of the first men? Even their gods are wrong. The others take the Lannisters too, I've had a belly full of them." He drew his huge sword and continued, "Why shouldn't we rule over ourselves again? It was the dragons we married, and the dragons are all dead." Lord Umber pointed his sword at Robb. "There sits the only king I mean to bow my knee to, my lords. The king in the north." Lord Umber then knelt before Robb, placing his sword at the boy's feet. Soon the men joined in, shouting, "The King in the North," and a new king was made. Next, in A Clash of Kings, Lord Umber takes his duty to his newly made king very seriously. No slight on Robb's honor is permitted. When a Frey calls Robb my lord, Greatjon is quick to correct him. "Your Grace." Lord Umber would also still retain the honor of being the loudest of Robb's bannermen in A Clash of Kings. Also his truest and fiercest warrior, if you ask Greatjon. When Robb finally gives peace terms to the Lannisters to be delivered by a Frey, and part of the terms involve the North and Riverlands being their own dominion, Greatjon booms, "The King in the North!" while his ham-sized fist hammered the air. "Stark! Stark! The King in the North!" At the end of the terms, Greatjon once more roars, "Stark! Stark! Stark! King in the North!" with other voices taking up his cry. Greatjon is so boisterous and sometimes obnoxious, Robb even uses him as a way of getting his mother to treat with Renly, saying if she won't go, he'll send Greatjon. And even Catelyn knows Greatjon is poorly suited to treat with a man like Renly Baratheon. Greatjon continued to fight alongside Robb. After fighting the battle at Oxcross, he seized the gold mines at Castamere, Nuns Deep, and the Pendrick Hills for his king. When news comes of Theon killing Robb's brothers Bran and Rickon, it is Greatjon that brings Robb the news. After receiving this information from Lord Umber, Robb unfortunately has sex with Jane Westerling in his grief and marries her the next day. In anger for not honoring the marriage arrangement between Robb and the Freys, Sir Ryman Frey takes his men and leaves. Greatjon urged Robb to attack them for doing so, but Robb refused. Later, to help make amends, Lord Umber offers to wed his uncles to some Freys. Next, in A Storm of Swords, Lord Umber defends Catelyn after it is discovered she released Jaime Lannister. After Lord Karstark chastises her, Lord Umber rumbles, crossing his huge arms against his chest, "Leave off, Karstark. It was a mother's folly. Women are made that way." Shortly after, Greatjon goes to Catelyn, lifts her off her feet, squeezing her arms with his huge hairy hands to comfort her and let her know he isn't mad. And I feel like I don't have to say this again because it's expected at this point. But yes, earlier in the scene, Lord Umber also shouted "King in the North" rather excitedly. Catelyn releasing Jaime eventually leads to Lord Karstark and some of his men killing 2 captive squires, a Frey and a Lannister, in revenge for his son's death. They are caught, and Greatjon, upon Robb's orders, marches the men who did it, now prisoners, into the hall. Greatjon informs Robb that there were 8 men that did the deed, but they killed 2 taking them, and a 3rd is now dying. Lord Umber again shows his lack of tolerance for disrespect to his king when Lord Karstark calls Robb a boy. Lord Umber makes him pay for the insult by hitting him with a mailed fist that sends him to his knees, breaking at least one of his teeth. On Robb's order, Lord Umber leaves Lord Karstark alone after hitting him. However, when Lord Karstark decides to insult Robb again, only moments later, Greatjon grabs a spear and puts it to his shoulder. "Let me spit him, sire. Let me open his belly so we can see the color of his guts." Fortunately for Lord Karstark, he is saved when Brynden Tully comes in with urgent news that Robb needs to hear privately. Robb orders Greatjon to keep Lord Karstark until he returns, and to hang the other 7, even the dead ones. Lord Umber and his men go through with the orders. Shortly after Lord Tully, Robb's grandfather, dies, and Lord Umber is one of the people standing outside to give Robb his condolences. Next, Lord Umber is given the honor of leading Robb's van during the journey from Riverrun to the Twins for the wedding of Edmure Tully and Rosalind Frey. Greatjon would often sup with Robb and around the bogs of Hag's Mere, while in the king's tent with Robb and others, news of Balon Greyjoy's death would arrive. Upon hearing Balon's eyes were eaten by crabs, Lord Umber laughs. "King crabs, I hope, to sup upon such royal jelly, eh?" A bit later in the king's tent, Greatjon tries to laugh at the news of Euron Greyjoy being back on the islands and the new king, but Robb would silence him with a simple look. Hearing the news of Balon's death and Euron's kingship, Robb decides to take Moat Cailin, and he puts Greatjon in charge of leading the van against the stronghold. He tells Lord Umber his attack must be so fierce that the Ironborn have no leisure to wonder if anyone is creeping down on them from the north. Greatjon chuckled at that, replying, "Your creepers best come fast, or my men will swarm those walls and win the moat before you show your face." After hearing all of Robb's plans, Greatjon tells him he likes his plan and that, "I'll make a gift of it to you when you come dawdling up." Their plan was to attack after the wedding at the Twins. When they arrive at the Twins, Greatjon is one of the lords to thank Lord Walder for his hospitality before Edmure's wedding. As well, before the wedding, Greatjon is with Robb when he gets news from Roose Bolton about the Lannisters' victories on the Trident and the taking of northern hostages. After the losses on the Trident, even Lord Umber is somber and subdued. Greatjon is also present in this meeting when Roose Bolton gives news of Winterfell and Theon Greyjoy being taken care of by his son Ramsay. Upon Roose Bolton removing a ragged strip of leather from the pouch of his belt, skin from Theon Greyjoy, Lord Umber snorts like a bull. All seems to be going well at the twins when the wedding of Edmure Tully and Rosalind Frey begins. At the wedding, Lord Umber proved to be a talented singer when he first sang The Bear and the Maiden Fair, which wasn't actually the song the musicians were playing at the wedding and caused a bit of disharmony, but he got excited. He later sang of the maid with honey in her hair, and then while the musicians played the Iron Lances, Greatjon decided to bellow, The Lusty Lad. Most importantly, shortly into the wedding, Jon is roaring drunk. During the course of the wedding, Greatjon is able to drink 2 men under the table. When the bedding ceremony comes, it is Greatjon that shoves through the men, throws Rosalind over his shoulder while yelling, "Give this little bride to me. Look at this little thing. No meat on her at all." Rosalind desperately clutched to him, some thinking perhaps she was afraid that he would actually drop her. Just after getting the newly wedded couple naked, Lord Walder Frey's treachery is revealed. It turns out Lord Umber's drunkenness was the plan of the Freys the entire time, to get Greatjon so drunk he couldn't stand, let alone fight. Though, if you ask Catelyn, telling Lord Umber not to drink was like telling him not to breathe for a few hours. So maybe he didn't need that much encouraging. Despite consuming what was said to be enough to kill 3 normal men, when the betrayal at the wedding happens, Greatjon was able to snatch a sword after breaking the arm of the first man to attack him. It took 8 men to get Lord Umber into chains, and in the process, Greatjon killed 1 man, wounded 2, and when he couldn't fight with his hands anymore, he ripped half an ear off a man with his teeth. Unfortunately, during the Red Wedding, Greatjon's son and heir, Small Jon, wasn't so fortunate, and he was killed while trying to defend Robb. After the Red Wedding, Greatjon would remain a captive at the twins. His captivity would force his 2 uncles to make tough decisions, which I'll talk about in the House Umber video. Thank you for watching, please hit the like button, and an overall history of House Umber will be coming soon. However, it won't be as comprehensive as this video, but more of a general overview. I just thought Greatjon needed his own video.